Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast on this 16th of September 2020. I'm your host, Ril Dil Quinn, discussing the world of sports and pop culture. It's great to be with you this evening. Starting to feel like fall. It really is. It's little, getting to the late 50s. I know it's warmed up now, but this morning a little chilly this morning. So fall is right around the corner. Officially, what, 5 days away? 21st on Monday. So we are headed towards a fall season, and a lot between the election being less than 50 days away, and hopefully nothing. Hopefully the corona calming down and not getting hit with that second wave that still has to be in the back and should be in the front of the minds of many many people, and it certainly is. So it's gonna be a very interesting fall to say the least. But we are here, of course, to discuss Game Seven, Clippers, Denver. Just is why you love sports. Is why you love the NBA. You just never know what's going to happen. And in 2020 has been a year of the unpredictable in terms of not sports, but in terms of life. And it was just last night was just something that I absolutely could not believe that I was watching. I've watched sports 35 years and been watching the NBA just as long. And to watch that unfold over the course of the last three games was just, again, something that you don't believe it unless you actually see it. Of course, the Denver Nuggets advanced to the Western Conference Finals, their first conference finals appearance going back to 2009, when they had it was a very good team, by the way, when they had Carmelo Anthony and Chauncey Billups and guys, Kenya Martins and Nene Hilarios, guys like that, as they fell to the Los Angeles Lakers, led by, of course, the late great Kobe Bryant in 2009, in a very tough series. 6 games, a very good series. Lakers won in 6 games. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that. I'm gonna get to the listen. I'm gonna get to the Denver aspect of this soon enough, um, because they deserve their flowers too. Um, but this is about the Clippers. Make no mistake about it. Denver, I will absolutely give them their flowers for that performance and taking consideration and what they've done, which is historic in this postseason, coming back from back-to-back 3-1 deficits. It's something that you may never see that again. I would you really could live another 50, 100 to 70 years and never see that again in any sport, it's let alone basketball. So what they done deserves its proper recognition, and I will absolutely give that to them. This is about the Clippers. Um, the Clippers all season long pretended as they have won, as though they had won 2 to 3 championships, and knew what it took to win, and knew that, hey, we'll be ready for the playoffs. We will count. We will turn it on when it counts the most. Don't worry about us. We're good. Nah, nah, we're good. Well, you look a little inconsistent. You're losing games that you probably shouldn't lose to, and one week you look like the best team by far in the NBA. The other week, next week, you look like an average team. What's going on? Well, we're still trying to get guys into the fold. Still trying to learn the chemistry. You know, Kawhi had to sit out a night. Sat out, didn't play last night. Paul, missed a couple games here and there. You know, we're still trying to figure it out. Okay. So we get to March, and before the pandemic hit, and before the NBA season was suspended, okay, Clippers went on a hot streak and looked like a team that was favored to win the championship, or in terms of it was right there along with the Lakers being like looking like the team, and it was amongst the 3 teams that people between the Lakers, Clippers and Milwaukee, those were the big three coming into the postseason. So the pandemic hits, you have basically 4 months off. So from March 11th to July 30th, have 4 months off, and you know, coming back when they started the bubble, everybody's saying, "Whoa, arrested LeBron, look out, look out, LeBron James is arrested. Uh-oh." And I'm saying to myself, no, look out for the Clippers. Paul George rested, Kawhi Leonard rested. They had knick-knack injuries throughout the course of the season, not those two in particular, but some of their guys, they're rested. There was talks that Paul George and Kawhi was, were on the same page as far as the chemistry. Look out for the Clippers. You get to the bubble, the 8-game seeding. Lakers didn't take it serious. Let's be honest, for the most part. Pushed themselves in a couple games, basically pushed themselves one game. And that was the first time they played the Clippers in that opening night, that Thursday night on July 30th. Other than that, Lakers was like, whatever. Clippers, that same mentality. Lou Williams, Lemon Wings Williams. Montrezl Harrell tragically loses his grandmother. Um, so they had to navigate through some things in terms of that. Completely, for the most part, didn't take the bubble serious. We'll be ready for the playoffs, though. When it counts, we will be ready for the playoffs. Get to a series against a Dallas team that nice team, and we know has a generational player. But Kristaps Porzingis was ejected one game and missed the second half of the game, and then you had him being missing some time with the knee injury, and they were pushed to 6 games. They were pushed 6 games there. All right, all right. You run into a generational player. He hits a great shot. You were up 3-1. You close out game 6. Not ready to push the panic button. Okay. Get to Denver, and you clearly are the better team. Clearly are the better team. You embarrass them in game 1, lose game 2, and then you proceed to really put your foot down in games 3 and 4. 3-1. This is the Clippers. This is it. This is the Clippers that we've been waiting for. This is your championship favorites. This is the team that's gonna give Kawhi his place in history as an iconic player, as somebody who's gonna win 3 championships with 3 different teams, 3 Finals MVPs with 3 different teams. And then game 5 happens. Have a 16-point lead, second half. Paul Millsap has a relapse of youth from his Atlanta days. All right, let's just take care of it in game 6. Game 6, you're up 19. The Joker becomes the Joker. And now all of a sudden, you find yourself in a game 7 against a team who over the last 2 years have lived in game 7s. Like Denver, last 4 playoff series, every series has went to game 7. You're right in your wheelhouse, and you're right in their wheelhouse. And they had no answers. And even last night, 12-point lead. Um, the key moments of that game was the Jamal Murray 20-point quarter. That's where that game turned. But once things started going downhill, once Denver made his run at the end of the first half and overcame that 7-point deficit early in the third quarter, Clippers folded they melted like ice cream in June. Um, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, 10 for 38, 4 for 18 from three-point land. You have a team with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, Montrezl Harrell, Lou Williams, Marcus Morris scored 89 points in a game 7. Think about that. 89 points in a game 7. They had 33 points in the second half. 33 points in the second half. There was a line again. There was a line in Remember the Titans, one of my favorite sports movies. It was a scene with Wood has his character, Julius Campbell, was talking to Gary Bertier. Of course, they were the captains of the team or the leaders of the team. Bertier was a captain. And without getting into particulars, Bertier Campbell, Wood has his character says, attitude reflects leadership. And that's why the Clippers lost this series. A lack of leadership cost them. And to me, in a players driven league, it begins with your star, your superstar player, in future Hall of Fame player, Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi really has had the benefit of being with two franchises where he did not have to be a vocal leader. The Spurs had Tim Duncan, Parker Ginobili, Greg Popovich. They had won championships. They had won championships before he came along. They were well established. He kind of was. He was kind of next in line to take that tradition of the Spurs into the future. We know what happened, so we don't have to get into what transpired and how that ended. He goes to Toronto. Toronto had some playoff mishaps, to say the least, but still were a upper echelon franchise that was well run and had some leaders on that team. Look at Toronto this year. Within a possession here, a couple of possessions from being in the Eastern Conference Finals, in a tougher Eastern Conference without Kawhi. Without Kawhi, think about that. And they frankly were my pick to get to the finals, even at the beginning of the playoffs. I made the wrong pick, but that team, Kawhi did not have to exude great leadership on that franchise. In terms of that particular franchise, all he had to do was play hard, just play well, and handle his business. That is not the case with the Los Angeles Clippers. If you're Kawhi Leonard, and listen, Kawhi was awful last night. We 6 for 22, 14 points, his worst playoff performance of his career in a big spot. I don't count those early years in 2012, 2000, even 2013. We barely knew who Kawhi Leonard was. So I don't count that. That was still Duncan's and Ginobili's and Tony Parker's teams. And Kawhi didn't become an All NBA caliber player really until that 2014, 2015 season anyway. But now in 2020, this was his team. This was his franchise. He pulled all the strings to put all of this to get all this put all of this together, as far as Paul George forcing the Clippers' hand to trade all these draft picks, load management, and that culture cost the Clippers. It was culture, or lack thereof, that frankly cost the Clippers in this series. Yeah, the Clippers, accumulated all the assets to make those trades. Yeah, their owner is a great owner. He learned from early mistakes. Got some real people, real general managers, real personnel people. Lawrence Frank, Jerry West got some real people in the front office. They got all these analytics people. They're considered to be one of the most well-run franchises in the league in terms of how they conduct business. Okay, all those things are true, but your leaders establish your culture. And I'll get to Doc Rivers. Kawhi Leonard, as a leader. Now, if you want to know the biggest difference between LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard, it's not so much on the floor as far as skill and things of that nature, physically. It is leadership. On this team, with this franchise, with this history, Kawhi Leonard can no longer be a cyborg. He can no longer be the come to work, just do my job, keep it moving, lead by example. No. Can't do it with this franchise, because it's actually, to be honest with you, it's actually harder to go from good to being a champion than it is to go from terrible to just being a regular playoff team. And that is the next step in Kawhi's evolution as a player is Kawhi as a leader. Jay Williams said something a couple of days ago after they lost game six. Said that Kawhi's points and when he plays well does not translate, that energy does not translate towards the rest of the team. And I think he has a very good point with that statement. I really do. Like, you're the best player. I don't want to hear from Patrick Beverly. I don't want to hear from Marcus Morris. I don't want to hear from Montrezl Harrell. You're Kawhi Leonard. You are the straw that stirs the drink with the Clipper franchise. That team, whether he likes it or not, is going to take his lead. So if it's cool, calm, and we got it, we're good. That is what they're gonna take. If it's like, yo, foot in your ass, yo, y'all better get together, or you know what, I'll get somebody, I'll get some of y'all traded. That's a whole nother story. Lakers know, you don't perform, LeBron's gonna have you shipped out of there. It's just that simple. Now you want to say, hey, LeBron has too much power. Okay, he's made some mistakes as a quote as being, he's made some player mistakes as far as putting teams together. He has, but you know, when it's Cleveland, both times, and when it's LA now, you know whose franchise it is, and you know that team is gonna be ready to play, and you know that there's gonna be a level of accountability. And with the Clippers, again, the Clippers, I don't want to hear about. And I heard a lot of this last night with the Clippers in their post game interviews. Um, Denver, been together longer. We, this wasn't a championship or bust year. Um, Things of that nature. No, 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 no. This team was built to win now. See, in the NBA, things change so quickly because these guys, these players' attitudes and their mindsets change like the weather. Like a guy could be on a team that's considered to be one of the greatest teams of all time, then all of a sudden feel like he's not, being doesn't get his proper respect and demand to go play with another malcontent who has proven to piss off teammates and Kevin Durant. So players change their minds every day. So there's no 5 year, 7 year, 10 year plan in the NBA. It is about winning now. Yeah, you can build for the future. Uh, you can have a plan to where you can have a vision of what your franchise is going to look like in 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years. But ultimately, the NBA has become NFL like in the sense that it is about this year. It's about this year. It's about winning right now. So again, in regards to Kawhi, look, welcome to running your own franchise. Welcome to when you get mentioned among, when your name starts to get mentioned among all time greats. You got all the praise that you were getting last year, rightfully so. 41 points in a game seven, Finals MVP, guarding Giannis, all that. You know what? There's a flip side to that coin. When you lose a series that you have no business losing, and they had zero business losing this series, you got to deal with that smoke. And whatever all the smoke he's getting right now is well deserved. There's no ways to it. He deserves, like, now again. I heard people say, well, he's still not gonna get LeBron type smoke. Well, he's not LeBron James. LeBron James is a polarizing type figure in regards to LeBron James is one of the biggest athletes in the world. Kawhi Leonard is not a fraction of I'm not even talking about as a player, but just as a public figure, as a athletic figure. LeBron James is a world brand. Kawhi Leonard will never reach that status as a. That's just not his personality. That's just not who he is. So he's never going to get. And LeBron James, when you call yourself the chosen one and the self-proclaimed GOAT, it's going to be a lot of tension that comes with that. But make no mistake about it. This this loss, this lost championship here, this lost season here is squarely on the shoulders of Kawhi Leonard. There's no two ways about it. Paul George, that's who Paul George is. I mean, go look at Paul George's last three postseasons in terms of decisive games. This is what he does. I wasn't surprised at Paul George at all, hitting the side of the board no, it wasn't. What Paul George had 10 points. Yeah, I think Paul George only had 10 points. It wasn't so shocked at all that Paul George played like that. Not in the least bit. If you watch Paul George in the postseason, I mean, please. This guy, and Paul George is an All NBA caliber player, he's an All Star, but he's not a big game player. He's never been a big game player. Kawhi has had, you know, this hasn't happened to Kawhi before, like this, in this manner. 2015, he didn't play well in 2015 in Game 7 against the Clippers, but he wasn't awful. He just didn't, just wasn't great. He was just okay in that game. He wasn't awful. But even that, you still had Duncan on that team. You still had Parker on that team. So he didn't take all the necessary heat. But from that standpoint, Ginobili was still on that team as well. 2016, when they lost Oklahoma City, again, wasn't great in that series. Was outplayed by Durant, but he wasn't. You still had the presence of those veterans that kind of offset his performance or lack thereof in that particular series. So he's had some so-so moments in big spots, but his major moments, in particular last year and what he was doing in 2017, um, clearly outshined moments that he hadn't come up big in. But this right here, this is the defining moment up until this point. Despite the two Finals MVPs, despite the two championships, this is the defining moment of Kawhi Leonard's career up until this point. Like, this is even more defining than him winning Finals MVP. I mean, he's a great player. Just make no mistake about it. Kawhi Leonard is a great player, and I am a huge Kawhi Leonard fan in terms of his approach to the game, in terms of how he plays the game, in terms of, night in and night out, gives you everything. But again, he wet the bed last night. And again, that his performance is even it doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of that performance last night versus his overall leadership ability, leadership style in terms of being with that franchise, in terms of how he needs to grab that franchise by the throat as a leader, and that will be the next step in his career. Period. As far as Doc Rivers goes, a lot of people are on Doc about rotations and about from X's and O's, adjustments, the usual shit that you hear when coaches lose a playoff series in the NBA. Montrezl Harrell, could he have sat Montrezl Harrell, bench Montrezl Harrell? Okay, yeah, sure. Doc's biggest failure in this series was similar to Kawhi in terms of leadership. Doc's strength is his ability to coach all stars, coach veteran players, and connect to today's player. Doc did not connect at all to this team, and from a standpoint of whatever message that he was trying to convey, it did not get through. And I believe that the right message was not being conveyed to that team. I think Doc had this mentality similar to Kawhi, like, hey, when when it's time for us to really turn it on, when it's time for us to really, put pedal to the metal, we'll be fine. I really believe that that was the mentality that Doc instilled instilled in that team, and it completely, of course, we saw it completely backfired because when you haven't won anything, you there are habits that you have to build up even through a long and tedious regular season. There are habits that you have to build up that will carry you through in the postseason. And again, part of this was a fragile team. I mean, the Clippers were a fragile. I mean, they were not. This was not from a mentality standpoint. They were miles away from being a championship team. From in terms of having a championship mindset. I mean, you want to win a championship, you got to be able to deal with some adversity. I mean, I remember getting back to the Lakers. I remember 2000, which was the best Laker team in the Kobe Shaq era. That 2000 team out with the 5 championships that those guys won during that particular time period. 5 by Kobe, three by Shaq when he's with the Lakers. The 99 2000 team was clearly their best team. They were 67-15 during the regular season. They um, they had a great point differential. They put pedal to the metal every game, no matter who they were playing. They went out their way to say like, this is who we are. This is the type of team that we're going to be um, this year. Get to the playoffs. They struggle. They go 5 games with a Sacramento team that frankly was not that good at that time. This was not a vintage. This was not the Sacramento team that you would see 2 years later. That probably outplayed, no, not probably, but clear that outplayed the Lakers in the 2002 Western Conference Finals. We know what happened with the officials, and the Lakers were were the beneficiaries of some you know some suspect, to say the least, officiating. Um, but that series went 5 games. They almost blew a 3-1 series lead against Portland. They're down by 13 going into that fourth quarter on the midst of one of a historic collapse as far as the Laker franchise. But to Phil Jackson's credit and to the credit of the leadership that was established with those veteran players, whether it be Kobe, Shaq, not Kobe at the time, but Shaq, Brian Shaw, Robert Ory, guys who had veteran experience. Robert Ory had championship experience. They were able to um, overcome that deficit and get to game and win Game 7, get to the finals. Even in the finals, Kobe hurts his ankle, misses a game. They still found a way, to. They had a couple of bad performances. Still, were able to get by Indiana. So the point is, if you want to be a championship team, you're going to have to go. You're going to have to deal with adversity over the course of a season, and in the playoffs. And this team, mentally, in terms of I'm talking about the Clippers, were not built to deal with adversity. And again, that goes at the feet of Doc Rivers and Kawhi Leonard and Doc Rivers in that order. Period. And again, Doc Rivers, I think Doc is a very good coach. I don't think Doc is a great coach. When I think of truly all-time legendary coaches, I don't put him in that realm, in that category. He'll be in the Hall of Fame. He's won enough games. He has a championship, been to the finals a couple times. But you take Doc after Boston, the record is not good as far as like his playoff in terms of playoff, in which great coaches are gauged. He's had star players, and you know they haven't been able to get to the conference finals. He's had think about this. Put DeAndre Jordan aside, um, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George. Chris Paul, and Chris Paul and Blake Griffin were two of the top 10, 12 players during that time period and couldn't get to the conference finals, not once. And when you've been on, I mean, this is the think about this with Doc. Not only this the third time in his career that Doc Rivers team has blown a 3-1 lead. He's had 3 other times where his teams have been up 3-2 and they've blown leads. 2009 against Orlando, 2010 against the Lakers, 2012 against Miami. And remember, Miami did not have Chris Bosh in that series up until I believe Game Seven. And Bosh had a big Game Seven in that series. That series was there for the taking for Boston. Though it would have been a disastrous loss for Miami. That of course we know that would have broke up the Heat had they lost that game, considering what had transpired in 2011 again in the finals. So uh, again, I don't foresee major changes from the Clippers. Maybe they don't sign Montrezl Harrell. Maybe they go out, get a couple ancillary pieces here and there, but they're gonna be locked into this team for next year. The majority of these players will probably be back. I don't see a major trade that they're gonna make. I don't see them moving Paul George. I don't think Doc will get fired. By the way, as well. I think Doc pretty much. Again, boy, if Kawhi was LeBron, Doc might be out of there. To be honest with you, because you never. The thing about sports in any sport, you never know when your championship window is going to be up. You had told me that Golden State would have, when they got Kevin Durant, that Golden State would only win two championships with Kevin Durant. I would have been like, are you kidding me? They're gonna win five, six, seven. They're gonna win at least five, at least. Things change in the NBA. They change fast. This might be the Clippers' best chance to win a championship this year. This might have been their best chance. Golden State's gonna be back next year. Denver's only gonna get stronger. Lakers will be good next year. The West is getting harder. The West is getting like you have teams that are coming. Portland is a move away from being a contender. So you just never you can't sit up here and say, hey, we're gonna be great for the next 4 to 5 years. That's not how the NBA works. That's really not how sports works anymore. As far as the Denver goes, give them all the credit in the world. Um, they had something that the Clippers frankly did not have. And that's character. Every reason to frankly to quit. You've been in the bubble for like 60 days, 60, 70 days. Nobody really wants to be there. To be honest with you, and teams are just gutting it through. They want to win the championship. But nobody really wants to be there. Um, and Denver over the course of these playoffs there have been times where Denver has looked like a team that didn't belong on the same floor as their opponent. I mean that Utah series, I'm like Utah was running them off the floor. Like there's no way this team is forget about competing for a championship. There's no way this team's gonna win this series. And they you get you have two players who have completely elevated their games. Jamal Murray, um, Jamal Murray, I thought coming into the season, I always thought Jamal Murray was a good player, but I never saw this coming with Jamal Murray to where he could play like an all-star guard and look like a guy who can be a future All NBA caliber player. And he was tremendous last night. That 20-point second quarter was the difference in the game. You drop 40 in an elimination game in a game. He has 40 points in three separate elimination games in this postseason. You're on the court with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. You drop and Patrick Beverly, who are all league caliber defensive players, and drop 40 in a game seven. I mean, that's a big time performance. You know, as far as Jokic, this guy is one of the top 6 or 7 players in the league. There's no two ways about it. He is just outside of that top five range. He's in that 6 to 8 category. He is a legit MVP caliber player. And you look at his postseasons over the last 2 years, he has been dominant in the postseason. And he by far and away was the best player in this series. In the series with Kawhi Leonard, yes, he was by far the best player in this series. I mean, he goes 16, 22, and 13 with 3 blocks in a game 7. His playoff numbers over the last 2 years, look at them. They've been spectacular. And I remember there were concerns about his weight loss coming back from, the pandemic and coming back from when he, coming back from the long break. It has not been an issue. So Denver is absolutely to be taken seriously. The Lakers have listen. LeBron James knows, and again, LeBron James is smart enough to know and played in this league long enough to know that you don't underestimate any opponents, especially at this point in the season, Western Conference Finals. The Lakers will absolutely take Denver series. I, of course, you favor the Lakers, but this is not going to be an easy series. It's not because really the Lakers don't have a matchup for Jokic for Murray. They can't do some of the stuff that they were doing to Murray because you have Jokic. And I know the Lakers want to see the series 3-1, and they've had. Please dismiss anything that you saw in the regular season. This is a new season. The bubble is a what have we learned in watching these games? Milwaukee out, the Clippers out, Toronto out. This is a new season. It is a different season. It is a absolutely different season. So don't dismiss anything you saw in the regular season. You really have to at this point. As far as the Eastern Conference goes, that is going to be a knock 'em down, a knockout, knockdown, drag out series. That I'll be shocked if that series doesn't go 7. I thought last night, yeah, um, Boston, of course, did not get enough, didn't get enough out of Kemba or Jalen Brown. With that being said, Boston absolutely should have won that game. Um, Miami is going to die, and they're going to die hard. This is all there is to it. They're a team that, again, we talk about culture, we talk about character. Miami Heat exude both culture and character. They are never out of the game. They um, they have a closer in Jimmy Butler. They have guys that are not afraid to take big shots. Um, the Bam Adebayo block was one of the great blocks that you'll ever see in a big spot in the playoffs. It was he looked like he was about to be put on a poster, blocking it with the left hand and basically bending his hand back with the force that Tatum was coming with. I didn't like Boston's offense in the last three to 4 minutes of the game, and including the overtime. Way too much one-on-one with Tatum. Um, Boston is at its best when Jalen Brown is aggressive, and Jalen Brown is looking to is really looking to score and looking for a shot. Last night, 6 of 14. I kind of thought that Jalen Brown kind of took a back seat to Tatum and Marcus Smart. This team is at its best when they're being led by Jalen Brown. Either or. I mean, Tatum, Brown, Brown, Tatum. Those are their two best players. Tatum and Brown in that order, and it's really much closer than what people realize. Jalen Brown is a All NBA caliber player. He really is, and you know, I think they can. I like Marcus Smart, but in order for Boston to win this series, it's going to have to be Jalen Brown is going to have to be like that co-lead, if not the lead on this on moving forward in this series. I don't expect another 20 point game out of Jay Crowder. So to me, that was an aberration. But you might get a 20 point game out of Hero or Duncan Robinson. That's the thing about Milwaukee, about Miami. They have a lot of guys that can contribute. Um, Again, I still like Boston in this series. I picked them in 6. Maybe it goes probably goes 7. But I still think that those three, um, in terms of Tatum, Brown, and to a lesser extent Kemba Walker, because he hasn't played well, I still think those three will be enough to get Boston through. But that was a game Boston probably should have won. I want to give Miami more credit and say that they stole it. I don't, I'm not gonna go. I don't think Miami stole it. But that's a game that if you're Boston, you probably you're up 14 in the second half. You have a huge third quarter, have a lead going to the fourth quarter. You figure but you figure that you would be in good shape going heading down the stretch. But again, I did not like the Boston possessions, offense possessions down the stretch into overtime. Again, that's going to be a classic series. And again, the amazing thing about the Clipper Denver game was that the Boston Miami game was a classic. Went to overtime, great block, had some good individual performances. The Los Angeles Clipper collapse actually almost made that Boston Miami game an afterthought for game one of a conference final. That's that is how you know that's how historic that that Clipper Denver game was. A couple notes before I let you before I get out of here. Of course, you have the U.S. Open tomorrow, starting tomorrow. Dustin Johnson is the favorite. He's won the tournament before. It's his only major a couple years ago. He's a 7-1 favorite. Tiger Woods is 45-1, which is wow. This is it shows you where people think where his game is at right now. Wingfoot is a tough course. I love the U.S. Open because it is the one tournament where I don't mind the golf course being the star. And if you remember, last time they had the tournament at Wingfoot in '06, it was one of the wildest finishes in the history of major golf in recent memory. You had Ogilvy won going five over. Mickelson, Furyk, and Colin Montgomery all could have won a tournament, all could have won on the last hole, and they all choked. So that was it. I remember. I specifically remember that tournament, that major tournament, for just how just insane it was. Mickelson was trying to win his third straight major or something like that. He was really in a groove, in a great groove going into that particular tournament because he had won the Masters in '06 of that year, and he had won the PGA, I believe, in 2005. So he was going after his third straight major. So this was peak Mickelson playing the best golf of his career, and I'm sure. And we know Mickelson has had a lot of close finishes. He had a number of second place finishes over the course of his career. I'm sure that '06 U.S. Open makes him sick to his stomach as far as near misses in his career. Um, the Big Ten is going to return. Big Ten football is going to return October 24th. This is the bottom line. So the Big Ten 6 weeks ago basically says, you can't play. It's not safe. We don't have the necessary contact tracing and testing, and medically it's not feasible right now. And magically in 6 weeks now we've made medical advancements. It's everything. We feel confident about how safe it is to play. The bottom line is, listen, they folded under pressure. They folded like cheap suits under pressure with the parents and the players, and with in terms of chasing every single dollar imaginable. Remember, remember this about the Big Ten. The Big Ten is the most profitable conference in college football. The Big Ten has its own network. Okay, the Big Ten network. They were not going to walk away from. They just were not going to walk away from that money, from the ideal of all that of all of that revenue. It just wasn't going to happen. It just goes to show you that ultimately people just not get just people don't give a shit about these players, and even the parents. If you got parents who probably who want some of their players who think that if they play, that this will increase their some of their child's chances of of going pro or getting to a pro, or just going pro, or they just flat out don't believe. We see this around the country of where you got segments of the country that don't believe Corona is real. You still have those people out there that don't believe that the coronavirus is real and don't or don't take it serious. So I'm not surprised by this. Um, I expect to see the Pac-12 is going to be difficult with the Pac-12 because they're under so many different regulations with the state of California, and a lot of their conferences in the state of California. So I don't think the Pac-12 will be coming back in the fall. But I'm frank, at this point, it would not shock me. Wouldn't shock me. I still don't think we will finish football, um, NCAA or the NFL, with if the projections of this second wave are anywhere close to being accurate. I still don't think football will get finished, um, on both levels. But you know, I could definitely be wrong. Trying to predict 2020. Good luck with trying to predict 2020. This has been one of the most unpredictable years in recent memory. So, who knows what's going to happen. But I'm not surprised by this by any stretch of the imagination that the Big Ten went this route. All NBA teams came out. No surprises, no major surprises. Um, LeBron makes his record 16th appearance. He extends his own record with 13 straight first team appearances. Luca, Harden, Giannis, Anthony Davis round out the first team. Um, Again, no surprises whatsoever. Ben Simmons, first time he gets on here. He made the All NBA third team. You saw Westbrook was third team. Chris Paul was second team. Kawhi was second team. Um, I would have had now Siakam was second team. I would have had Tatum, and Tatum was third team. I would have flipped places with those two. And I'm not even talking just beyond the forget about just playoffs and the seeding. The seeding games did not count. I'm talking about even just strictly on regular season. I think I probably would have had Tatum over Siakam, but that's second team, third team. It's not a big. It's not like going from first team to third team, something like that. So that's not really a big deal per se. So nothing surprising as far as the All NBA teams. Again, Giannis. I expect that Giannis will be named MVP next week. That is, I want to say that is the final award for the NBA awards. Of course, because of the pandemic and the late start to the season or extension of the season, will not have their normal uh, end of the year awards. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I will see you next time. I'm out.